Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar here at the New Hampshire Insurance Department. This month, we'll be discussing the pros and cons of alternative health plans. And this webinar is in conjunction with a recent consumer document that we just issued, and I've posted a link to that in the chat. So we'll be discussing some of the things you need to know about these products and how they may be good or not so good for you and your family. As always, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions, we're happy to entertain those at the end of the presentation. So please use the chat window to type your questions in, and our subject matter experts will address those at the end, as I said. This month, we are joined by Josh Hilliard. Joshua is our enforcement counsel here at the New Hampshire Insurance Department. And as always, we're joined by Commissioner Betancourt. I'd like to kick it off to him for a few opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome to our July webinar. I hope everyone is having a fantastic summer so far. Here in New Hampshire, we pride ourselves on having a very robust and competitive market for insurance products across the spectrum. And those include products that are intended to provide coverage to individuals for their health needs, but are not considered part of major medical. They're not part of what we would call the ACA type product market. And for a lot of consumers, these alternative options provide real value. And as the health insurance market across America continues to experience volatility, many consumers are exploring some of these alternative options as they represent for them a lower cost coverage alternative. And these are things like limited benefit products. These are things like health share type things, and we're going to talk much more about that. And again, some of these limited benefit products serve legitimate needs and may be appropriate for an individual depending on their particular circumstance. But the point of today's webinar is that consumers need to understand exactly what they are getting for this coverage, what is covered, what is excluded, and then to consider, given that information, whether this product is the best fit for them. Because we want to ensure that consumers, when considering these alternatives to, as I said, traditional major medical coverage, have the information to determine whether it's the right fit for them. And again, I mentioned things like health share organizations, limited partnership health plans, limited indemnity plans that are sometimes also paired with ancillary benefits. Those are the types of products that recently we've seen some issues come up with from consumers. So we thought that this was the appropriate time for us to have a little bit of a webinar to get some additional information out there about that. And to help us with that today, as Andrew mentioned, is Josh Hilliard. So I'll turn it over to Josh.
Thank you, Commissioner Betancourt. I'd like to echo some of what the Commissioner shared and note that many of the products I'm going to discuss today are offered lawfully here in the state by entities both here in New Hampshire and outside New Hampshire. What I'm going to focus on much of my discussion today, though, is about some of the warning signs we see, some of the problems we see with some of the entities and some of the products that are offered in this field, and how best consumers and those that can assist consumers in different roles can look out for these warning signs and best provide guidance to consumers to search for these types of plans when a major medical plan may not work best for them. Today I'm just going to talk very briefly about understanding enrollment in the ACA, because I think it's important to recognize some of the limitations in the individual market and why this oftentimes can give rise to some of these other plans, which has caused and can cause problems for New Hampshire consumers. I'm going to talk about something we oftentimes call Frankenstein plans here in New Hampshire, and that's what Commissioner Betancourt noted, some of those limited indemnity plans, which may have an insurance component combined with non-insurance products to try to build out something that may be claimed to be equivalent to a major medical plan, but really isn't. I'm going to talk about some of the ERISA plans we've seen lately, and I put ERISA in sort of scare quotation marks, noting that oftentimes these aren't what we'd consider legitimate ERISA plans. We're also going to discuss healthcare sharing organizations, again, many of which do operate lawfully in the state, but others which don't, and some of the concerns and problems that consumers should be alert for. Then, of course, I'd like to close with how the New Hampshire Insurance Department can help both consumers and those operating in this regulatory field, as well as how you can help us and help a larger marketplace. First, understanding enrollment in the ACA. It's important to note that open enrollment runs from November 1st to January 15th. And if you have not enrolled in a plan through the individual marketplace in that time frame, it can oftentimes be difficult to then get a major medical plan should you need care and not have the means otherwise to pay for that care. There are, of course, special enrollment periods. These are important to remember because if you are mid-year, not in that open enrollment period, you may qualify for a special enrollment period if you have a child, you've lost prior coverage that maybe you had through a workplace, or you got married or divorced. However, if you're outside open enrollment and you don't qualify for a special enrollment period, these are oftentimes the periods in which we see individuals opt for some of these other health insurance options. And as the commissioner noted, these can be a good gap. It can be something to fill that gap until maybe you do have a special enrollment period, or you get through to open enrollment and qualify for one of those individual plans through the ACA, which does provide that major medical coverage. A very important point I want to mention is that commissions for ACA plans generally run around $20 per member per month. It's not a huge commission. So if you're looking for assistance in enrolling in a plan, for instance through open enrollment, and you reach out to an insurance producer, an insurance agent here in the state, and they assist you in enrolling in such a plan, their commission is generally $20 per member per month. This actually is part of what fuels some of the misconduct we see on the part of some producers and agencies. And again, this is not limited simply to New Hampshire. It's seen across the country, but the examples I'm going to discuss today are things that we've seen in New Hampshire. This may be a little difficult to see, but I wanted to provide a graphic from a real case we had here at the department. And if you look closely, you'll see there's a column that discusses agent commission. It's about 2/3 of the way over. So this was the commission structure set up by an entity which offered some of these Frankenstein plans here in New Hampshire. And again, these are plans that incorporate a limited indemnity plan, such as it might be a hospital confinement plan, where you're paid $100 or $200 a day if you're hospitalized. There may be a critical illness portion. For instance, if you're diagnosed with cancer, you may get a lump sum of $5,000 or $10,000. These can be helpful benefits for individuals, but if it's really all that's part of your insurance plan, it's going to fall far short of what, of course, a major medical plan offers. One of the problems we see, though, is if you look at those digits under agent commission, they run anywhere from 50 to 70%. So rather than getting $20 per member per month with an ACA plan, you may instead have some producers, which are not acting in their consumer's best interest, point people towards a plan like this, where if they're selling it for $400 or $500 a month, that's going to be a commission to the agent of $250, $300, $400 right off the bat, just to get that individual enrolled in the plan. So what we see, unfortunately, are agencies most often located outside New Hampshire, but they are oftentimes licensed to sell products here in New Hampshire, which package together, like I said, some insurance product with other non-insurance products, which then they claim mimics in some ways the benefits of a major medical plan. Like I said, hospital confinement, critical illness. Oftentimes, though, there's other benefits provided, like a discount plan for prescriptions. Oftentimes, there's car rentals, gym memberships, things like that they package together and then misrepresent as that the sum is greater than the whole of its parts. We oftentimes see violations, most critically here, with misrepresentations to consumers. So a consumer is simply looking for health insurance, which they understand to be a major medical plan, but they're sold this, not understanding the significant limitations with a plan like this. They believe they've covered major medical, they believe they purchased major medical coverage, and then we get complaints, unfortunately, every month from consumers who are then very surprised when it turns out what they've purchased is something much less than that, and they're left with significant medical bills. To give you some examples, in 2021, the department here fined an agency $250,000 for the sale of such products, and actually were able to recover about $82,000 in direct restitution to consumers who had purchased it here in the state, again for misrepresentations of the product. In 22, we fined a number of agents who are misrepresenting these sorts of products to New Hampshire individuals. We currently have some other active investigations into entities like this. It's common plan we see where, unfortunately, excuse me, there's been misrepresentation with these sorts of plans. Bottom line, consumers should be careful. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. If you have an insurance agent telling you, I have a great plan, it's going to cover everything, all your doctors are in network, and it's going to be so much cheaper than what you'd get if you went to the individual market of the ACA. Sounds too good to be true? It probably is. It may be cheaper, but it's going to be much thinner in terms of the benefits actually provided to the consumer. A similar problem that we've seen crop up more lately are what we fashion as sort of ERISA plans. They are started by entities that claim that they are not subject to state regulation because they are a plan offered to employees, but in fact it's just a scheme that's operated in some instances to provide health insurance to individuals who otherwise would not qualify for health insurance like this. But again, the benefits are very thin. It mirrors in some ways the benefits provided in some of these limited indemnity plans. Here's actually an excerpt from the agreement that one of these plans has, and you'll see what I highlighted there. One of the purposes of this partnership, it asserts, is to provide health insurance. And honestly, that's really the only purpose of the partnership. They claim that they are going to collect, in this instance, data from the cell phone browsing of individuals who become part of this employer, and that every individual will be a working owner, that they're going to sign a joinder agreement and own 0.0001% of the company, and thereby, since they're a working owner, qualify for a health plan that the company asserts is not subject to state regulation. Really quick, ERISA stands for the Employment Retirement Income Security Act. It's federal regulation, which means that the U.S. Department of Labor has jurisdiction over plans that are properly and lawfully ERISA plans. What we see with these entities here, though, is that they're not true employers. All of the New Hampshire individuals that we've spoken to who have signed up for these sorts of plans just think they're buying health insurance. None of the individuals have done any work for the entities. None of the individuals have received any pay from the entities. None of them realize that they're considered employees or working owners. None of them receive any sort of tax forms, no K-1s, I-9s, W-2s, anything you'd expect if they were performing any kind of work for this employer. In fact, every consumer we speak to just believes that they've purchased health insurance. We have an open investigation against a number of these entities ongoing here, and in 2025, we were able to obtain an order against one of these companies to cease sales here in New Hampshire, to leave the state, and to inform all the members as they left the state of their options to enroll in a major medical plan through the ACA individual marketplace. The last entity I want to talk about is healthcare sharing organizations. What I've put on the screen is actually an excerpt from a cease and desist order the department issued about 6 years ago against one of these entities, Trinity. I want to make clear these were cease and desist orders that the claims have not been adjudicated to a final order. These are all just allegations as part of this, but it was a public cease and desist order issued by the department as to this entity. The department had significant concerns about this entity given how it operated and the ways in which it was both aggressively trying to recruit members and frankly not paying claims. There was issues in terms of its compliance with RSA 126V. That is the statute that provides for more or less a safe harbor for these sorts of entities. Again, there are lawful entities operating here as healthcare sharing organizations in the state. Unfortunately, there's been a number that have not operated here lawfully. And in this instance with Trinity, the department did litigate against Alara and Trinity, and Charity is the other name it was known by, for a number of years until, unfortunately, the entity went bankrupt and left consumers across the country with north of $300 million worth of unpaid claims. So you can understand where some of the department's concern is with the consumers really ending up in tight situations with some of these entities. So as I said, there's a safe harbor under RSA 126V for healthcare sharing organizations. Unfortunately, with most of these organizations, very little is actually contractually covered. There's no promise to pay with most of these entities, and so when consumers sign up for this, oftentimes they believe that it is going to be, again, equivalent to a major medical plan where If they have health care, they have a big bill, they can send it in and it will be covered. But there's no guarantee that any of this is covered, unlike with regular health insurance carrier operating here in the state, which must abide by the terms and conditions in the contract. We've taken administrative action against 3 of these entities that were operating unlawfully in the state in the last few years. Again, as I've said, others are operating lawfully here in the state. Bottom line, as a consumer, if you are interested in one of these organizations and are looking to have that as your primary source of sort of health care, health insurance coverage, you just need to be very aware of what is and what isn't covered. Oftentimes, given either the religious or ethical bent of these organizations, they may put things out of bounds in terms of what they cover, which ordinarily we think might. For instance, addiction treatment, mental health treatment, for many of these is not covered to any degree. And so any consumer looking into these sorts of entities just needs to be very careful in terms of what they understand the healthcare sharing organization will even consider. And lastly, if the entity is operating lawfully in the state, does abide by the requirements of RSA 126V, the department does not have jurisdiction. Of course, if they do not abide by the the requirements under RSA 126V, then they do fall under our jurisdiction as an insurance carrier, more or less, operating unlawfully here in the state. How can we help? So we always like to mention, please, any consumers or anyone assisting consumers in any way, if you have any questions, please reach out to the consumer division, either through the phone number, the email address, or the website there. I'd like to note that in the last fiscal year, so this would be the fiscal year that ended last July 1st, Consumer Services recovered over $6.5 million for consumers in New Hampshire. They do fantastic work, and some of that work is helping individuals who are in tough situations because they've enrolled in a Frankenstein plan, one of these ERISA plans, a fake ERISA plan, or one of these healthcare sharing organizations. Enforcement, the unit that I work in, we can take action against these regulated entities or those that are trying to skirt the law when they're operating unlawfully here in the state, and make sure that they are in compliance with the law, leave the state, and in some instances we're able to get some sort of direct restitution to consumers. We of course have a fraud division that can investigate criminal activity and refer it to the appropriate prosecuting authority here in the state as well. All avenues for consumers to hopefully get some redress and for us to make sure we have a competitive and marketplace that's operating on a level playing field here in the state. How you can help. We want anyone who has concerns about misrepresentation of any sort of healthcare product they're being sold, health insurance product, to reach out to the department. We don't know about it unless someone lets us know about it. So people coming to the department with concerns is critically important for us. Of course, encourage those you know to report concerns that they have about any of the insurance they have, and again, seek the same assistance from the department here. Caveat emptor, right? Beware of any plan that seems too good to be true. If it is, it probably is. Buyer beware. So again, you have concerns, reach out to the department or reach out to an agent you know or don't know. But we always recommend to reach out to a local agent. Not that there's many great agents across the country that are licensed here in the state and do good work, but honestly, most of the agents that I deal with that have problems are out-of-state agents reaching in and doing business here in the state. So I can't tell you that every agent here in the state is above board, but most of the problems we see are from out-of-state agents. So we'd always recommend speak to a local agent, someone you know, someone who has an office down the street. Lastly, cooperate with investigations. When we are conducting investigations here at the department, we of course have the power through our statutes to request information from those that are licensed or regulated by us. But if you're not, provide us documents and information. It's privileged, confidential, and not subject to right to know request pursuant to RSA 400A16. So there's protections built into our investigatory statute that cover those things that are provided by consumers and individuals that have concerns. So please reach out to us. Of course, want to be available to answer any questions anyone on the line may have for us.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box right now, but I do invite our viewers to type any questions in and we'll address them. I guess I'll just take a second here to echo what Josh said. We have talked for a number of years that I've been here about 2 very important things that he just touched on. One, buyer beware. and to talk to a local agent, talk to an independent agent who can work with multiple different companies to get you the best kind of information and not just be locked up in one type of product or one brand. Commissioner, while we wait to see if anyone has any comments, do you have any final thoughts?
No, just to say that, Josh, I think you did a fantastic job. What we really strive for here at the department in putting on events such as these webinars is to increase insurance literacy throughout the state. We fundamentally believe that by providing this type of information, we are empowering consumers to make the best decisions for themselves. And so hopefully today's presentation provides exactly that type of information to the consumer. So again, they can determine as they evaluate these products whether they're a good fit for them, given their particular set of circumstances and needs. Beyond that, I think that should wrap it up unless we've got some questions.
I don't see any questions. This and all of our webinars are available on our YouTube page. We invite you to take a look at those. There's something for everyone there, whether you're a consumer, a producer, an agent, someone from the companies, a member of the media, legislator. There's something for everyone on our YouTube to look at our past webinars. In the meantime, be sure to contact our consumer services unit if you have any questions ranging from understanding your inclusions and exclusions, the terms of your coverage, or need help navigating the claims process. We're here for you. We appreciate you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on next month's webinar. Have a great Independence Day, everyone. Thank you.